When we're young, we have an amazing, positive outlook about how great life is going to be, but somewhere along the line, we forget to dream and end up settling. Join Up Dots features amazing people who refuse to give up and chose to go after their dreams. This is your blueprint for greatness. So here's your host, live from the back of his garden in the UK, David Ralph.
How are we all? Episode 56 of Join Up Dots. It's June the 23rd, and in the word of Michael Bublé, I'm feeling good. There is a reason why I just did that. It wasn't just I'm having a breakdown. The chap I'm speaking to today lives in Calgary, and as I was flicking around, I've noticed that the legend that is Michael Bublé is playing live today. So I'm going to throw in some Bublé references and see if we can get the guest singing. Do you reckon he will? I don't know. Anyway, today's guest is a type of person that can only really be described as a serial entrepreneur. He's been founding and co-founding businesses since he was 14 years old, when he started his first business, a comics book rental company. And since then, he has navigated the world of the 9-to-5 with, let's say, wariness. Being somebody who readily describes himself as a round peg in a square hole, the life in corporate land was something that never really fitted. In fact, he considers working in a cubicle or other standard position as jail, and has since 2009 been inspiring folks across the globe to escape and find their own futures through the Breaking the 9-to-5 Jail program. And that passion has led him to become a public speaker of note, with keynotes and workshops driving home the message of consistent action taking. Using his life incidents, client stories, experiences, fun observations, and a unique storytelling approach, he has inspired, informed, and entertained audiences of all ages and abilities. He strongly believes that one can be overeducated, however, one can never be over-inspired. And inspiration is the most important element of each success story. So how does he do this? And how does he find the courage to take such huge action every day as he changes not just his life, but that of 1,000 others too? Well, let's just find out as we start joining up dots with the one and only Divesh Dwivedi. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Thanks, David. Thanks for such a wonderful introduction.
So can we get straight to the chase? Mr. Michael Bublé. He's singing in your town tonight. Are you going? Are you going with your partner, your wife, or whoever?
You know what? I have no plans just yet, but I might as well.
Can we recreate a bit of Michael Bublé sometime through the show? Shall we just do that?
Absolutely. Go on. Have fun with it.
No one is listening. I always say that just to sort of lure you in. So what is Calgary like for the person who is listening in today and has never been to Canada? Is it kind of, because the word the Calgary Stampede is the first thing that comes to mind. Is it kind of a cowboy town, or is that just something that happens once in a blue moon?
Absolutely. So Calgary is that, cowboy town, people call it cow town as well. Now, I didn't grow up here, so I'm I'm maybe not the best person to describe Calgary, but I moved here back in 2010. So about 4 or 5 years ago, I almost instantly fell in love with the city. It's awesome. It's it's pretty cool. It's laid back, not like London or New York or Toronto, other places that I have lived at. So it's not as cutthroat, as fast paced. So it's fun and laid back to to grow your family. It's an awesome place. I mean, the only complaint that I have is definitely the snow and the cold. As they say, Canada has only 3 seasons: winter, winter, and winter. So yeah, absolutely. Other than that, no complaints. It's an awesome place. And Calgary Stampede is fun too. I mean, that happens, of course, in July. So we are looking forward to that. It's coming up pretty soon.
I was talking to a chap on episode 12 called Jason Gaynard, and he comes from Canada, and he says that basically one of the beautiful things about Canada is the fact that it's so huge with so few people there. And he put it down to the fact that it was pretty much too cold to reproduce. Would you agree with that?
Well, I think it's too cold to reproduce more, actually, because you really want to be cozy, but I guess the land mass is so huge that we are not looking forward to a population explosion anytime soon. That's for sure. So
where was sort of growing up area for you? Where was your childhood?
So I was born in India. I did my schooling there, and then I moved to New York for my grad school, and I did my MBA there, and joined the corporate jail, as I say, for a few years, almost half a decade actually. At first, I thought maybe something was wrong with me, and I tried different jobs in different settings, different corporations. I was lucky enough to work for all sorts of not-for-profits and Fortune 5 companies, but yeah, just didn't fit in there. So that's the short of it.
And the long of it is, what was life in India compared to, say, New York? It must have been absolute culture shock when you came across.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. There was definitely there was definitely a culture shock, but I had some good support with friends and roommates and people of all sorts, international students who came with me in the same class and whatnot. So it got a little easier with the time, but absolutely when I first moved in, it was a big culture shock. The language, the culture, how you behave, what people expect, what is cool, what is not cool, everything was different. So yeah, absolutely.
And was it purely education? Because I know over the last maybe 5 or 6 years, an explosion has occurred in India. So places like Bangalore are absolute thriving business communities. So was it the sort of MBA that you required that you couldn't get in India that sort of dragged you over to America?
To be frank, it was not so much so there is a story behind why I put that, that condition or that education, instead of the MBA that I could have got in India. And for that, we'll have to dive, deep into, how I got to a point where I had to decide to get an MBA. So if you want, I can touch upon that.
That is the beauty of Join Up Dots. We can go anywhere you want. So let's dive. Let's dive.
Absolutely, absolutely. So when I was growing up, I opened my first company at 14, as you mentioned in my introduction. It was a comics book rental company. Basically, my family was tired that I would spend every single penny that I would get for, for any kind of allowance, anything. I would just spend it on comic books. I was big fan. I had maybe a garage full, maybe a garage and a half full of comic books, and still I would buy the more, the new books that would come out and whatnot. And to discipline me, they said, you know what, no more allowance, no more nothing for you, as long as you're spending money on comic books. So in the desperation of finding money to buy comic books and continue reading what I absolutely was passionate about, I was so into it that I had to find a way to make money, and I was only 14. So one day, at school, I noticed, kids go to the library, get books, and we were always bored that why the school library never had fun books. They only had a few of the comic books. They didn't have a big collection. So I thought, maybe I can start my own library. Maybe I can start my own comic book rental. And that's where I can charge people money and whatnot. So I did that. And, I absolutely failed within 3 months because the kids took the book but never came back to return those books. So within 3 months, the business was out of business, essentially, in the lack of system and inventory. So, and now in the hindsight, I can see that. But as a 14-year-old, I didn't see that. I thought, yeah, people will bring my books back, pay me the rental and all that. Anyways, I was I was pretty much put down because of that, because the principal of the school didn't like that I was getting into fights with every other kid in the school because I was trying to get my books back now.
Did you wear a superhero outfit when you were fighting?
I wish I was. So I thought I was at that time. In hindsight, now I think, what? Maybe I was not so much of a superhero, or I shouldn't even have tried, because that definitely landed me in a couple of troubles, and I definitely got grounded at home as well. And then so I was like, yeah, what? Family started putting pressure. No. Try to study harder. The typical traditional learning that we all get. Go to good school, get good grades, pass out, and graduate, whatever, pass out, whatever, get a good job and all that. So I said, yeah, what? I was pretty disappointed. As a 14-year-old, you're facing failure for the first time. So you are more disappointed than a typical guy in his 30s, facing some failure, I would say. So it's your first time. You've never failed, right? So I thought, yeah, let's go back to school. Maybe this is not what I want to do. And I had already lost the passion for it anyways, because my books were gone. So yeah, I started focusing on studies. By the time I finished my high school, I came across another idea of event management, right? And I bootstrapped another company when I was 20 then, um, which was essentially an event management and marketing company where we would do product launches and live events for bigger companies who are trying to do a launch of their product, whether it's a service, a new business, whatever that happens to be. And I bootstrapped that company with let's say about $20 to about a six-figure company in less than a year. And I essentially just I hustled my way through it. I went to people who needed each other and put them together on a platform. In this example, it was fashion schools, modeling agencies, all different kind of folks who needed each other to put together these live events and and promised each one of them a piece of the pie and whatnot. And that's how I creatively put my first event for for less than what it would have cost otherwise. And that's how we got started. Ran it for a couple of years. It was fun. And then again, for the reason that I would like not to publicly disclose, I got in trouble again.
Go on, come on. Right, I'm going to slow you down here. I think I need to take control of this because there's so many questions bouncing around my head. So I'm going to go with this first one. What was the bad thing that you did?
No, I mean, it's
how bad was it, Devesh?
Well, let's just say it's 20-something guys who are friends as well, hanging out with models and having fun with their business as well, and they could do a few things wrong, right? So
did you have to wear an outfit? Did you wear a superhero outfit?
No, I didn't. No, I didn't. But I definitely had protection for sure. So, yeah. So I mean, and that got me in trouble as well. And again, given India's ecosystem and culture and everything, that definitely got me in trouble. And and after that, my friends were more interested in running the show, and my thing, is about starting up. So once things get routine, I would say I lose interest in them anyways. So, I have started a few companies where I have literally, just sold it to a friend or or maybe just got bored out of it and and started pursuing something else. Because for me, the passion is in building something from scratch, baking that cake from scratch, right? So if I build a company and I've run it for 3 years, 4 years, and things start to get mundane and it's not challenging enough for me, I start to lose interest in it, right? And I believe that was most of the reason, why I also sold that company to the two friends who I founded it with. And at that time, because I was only a high school grad, and just pursuing my, my BCom, my bachelor's, on the side, my family was after me saying, no, you know what, you got to get in India, even bachelor's is not enough. Your family is like, no, get a master's, get this, get whatever, get even a PhD, become a doctor, whatever.
So did you feel tremendous pressure from your family to go down the path that they wanted? Was there no part of you that really wanted to go, look, mum and dad, just leave me be, I'm going to do my own thing?
Exactly. So, that's where, so to deal with Indian parents, you have to put such a condition in front of them that they cannot, fulfill. So I said, you know what? I don't want to do an MBA in India. If you want me to do a master's, I want to do it from the United States of America.
And then
you know what I mean?
And then I can bring you back models, Dad.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
As many models as you want, I will bring back to India for you, and you can pick the best.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, so, at that time, they said, and I never thought they would say yes, because, I didn't imagine that, they would say yes for any reason, because, again, from the software side of it, I'm the only son of my family. My mom didn't let me join, defense, in India because, the army in India, because I passed the exams, everything was fun, but she was like, no, you're my only son. I can't let you go to the army. No, I don't want to lose you or whatever. So I thought I could play the same card and and get out of it, get out of the whole do a master's as well. Because I was like, you know what, I'm better off just running my own show by myself. I'm making more money. To be honest, I didn't say that in their face because I would have got slapped. But I was making more money at one point, more than either one of my mom and dad, and they both are bankers, so they were making very decent amount of money. So for so I just put a condition in front of them which I thought they would not they would not agree to. And they didn't even they didn't even take a second to agree to. They were like, you know what, if you get an admission in a college in America, we are going to send you you're going to be 100% sponsored. We're going to give you the money. We don't care, but you write the exam, write the GMAT, write whatever you need to write, and show us the admission letter from the college.
Well,
and that was again, see, that's a challenge. So they put the challenge right back at me again. Of course, life doesn't come with instruction manuals. They come with mom and dad. So they know how to operate you, man.
But did you not think, when they agreed so quickly, did you not think, God, I should have gone for more. I should have gone for
exactly
bigger condition.
Yeah, send me to Mars or something.
Yes, absolutely. Take them for what you can get. So I want to take you back to your childhood, because the key thing to you so far is obviously your passion. When you talk, you go at 100 miles an hour, Devesh. You really do. There's so much coming out of you. It's amazing. When you had that comic book experience, do you now look back on it as a failure, or do you just look back on it as a stepping stone to where you are now?
To be honest, I see it as both, David. I see it as both. It was definitely a stepping stone. Stepping stone. Sorry. I still look at it in the hindsight, and this is one of the key reminders. Whenever I'm looking at another business opportunity, there was so much. That being my first one, there was so much that I learned from it. Absolutely, an immense, what school, what MBA, what high school, grad school, nothing could teach me what that one failure taught me, from the importance of knowing your customers, from the importance of having a system in place to make sure that your business is scalable, and you one morning you don't wake up to your business totally gone. Important things like that, the very basics of having a business, running a business, or something that I learned from that. So it was certainly a stepping stone. Yes, I do look at it from a failure perspective as well. But when I would say typically when people say failure, they tend to they tend to put it in the category of disappointment or or loss. Versus what I do is I say, a failure is mostly not really a failure, but more of a mistake, more of a learning opportunity, where it's like, hey, if I can learn from it, it was not really a failure. Imagine if I did the same thing when I was 20 or when I was 30, and I learned those lessons far more expensively. Would that be worth it? So that's the real key. So when I failed at that, yes, when I was 14, I thought, yeah, I've lost millions of dollars. That's how it felt like. That's how much pain I had, because I lost a garage full of comic books, which I held very dear to me. But at the same time, now in the hindsight, if you think about it, I lost a bunch of comic books, and that's how I learned these lessons. It's better than losing $500,000, when you are grown up and you start a serious business. So that's how I look at it.
It's a great lesson for everyone out there. And the motto of the show really is get out there, start trying things, have successes. You're going to have failures, but ultimately, if you get all your failures out of the way, you're going to achieve a success. And the key thing to you on that, even though you was a child, you learnt the fact that a failure didn't stop life. You just move on to the next stepping stone, don't you?
Absolutely. So I would be very honest with you. In hindsight, everything is 2020. Everything is beautiful. Everything is perfect. In hindsight, it's always spring, right? You can look back and say, yeah, you know what? This is what I did wrong, and this is what I could have, should have, would have done, right? So that's for sure. So the hindsight is always beautiful, but the key is not just looking at it in the hindsight, but also making it making it a point that, yeah, whatever I saw in the hindsight, whatever experiences I had, has to go, has to be, I would say, embedded in my way of doing business, in my way of analyzing analyzing situations, in my way of looking at everything that I do, so that I don't make the mistakes. Because key is to not make the same mistakes. It's always fun to make more mistakes. So, we are all mortal. We are all, to err is human, everything like that, right? So to make mistakes is not a problem, but to make the same mistakes is definitely a problem. So if I still don't put systems in my business, whenever I look at a new business opportunity, that would be the same mistake that I did when I was 14. And that would not be so cool, because, if I learn from it, I should be able to put that lesson in place and make sure the same mistake doesn't happen. So you're absolutely right, about the mistakes and the failures. Life shouldn't stop. At the moment of the failure, it definitely feels like, but that's the real key. The persistence is the key. If you hold on to it long enough to understand that, yeah, it's just an experience that's gonna pass by. It doesn't stop your life. That's the key to it.
Absolutely. And at that point, I'm going to point you towards Mr. Steve Jobs. I'm going to bring the two of you together, because I think that you've summarized his speech of 2005 fantastically well. So I'm going to bring this on now, and afterwards I'm going to ask how relevant it is to you. This is Steve Jobs.
Of course, it was impossible to connect the dots looking forward when I was in college, but it was very, very clear looking backwards 10 years later. Again, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. Because believing that the dots will connect down the road will give you the confidence to follow your heart, even when it leads you off the well-worn path. And that will make all the difference.
Well, the tagline to this show is join up dots, connecting our past to build our future. And I believe, as you were saying there, if you look back over your life and you connect the things that you can do well, and you look at the things that you've done badly, you get a pretty good path of what's going to lead you into the future. Now, those words that Steve Jobs said, I listen to on a daily basis, and I never fail to be inspired by them. But how relevant do you feel they are to your life, Devesh?
Absolutely. So, I guess the last 5-10 minutes that we spent on on talking about how how we should deal with mistakes, or how I look at my comic book rental company, which I started at 14, as a stepping stone as well as a mistake and whatnot, is absolutely applicable to this to this speech that you just ran here. So yeah, absolutely. If you look at it as I said, if you look at anything in hindsight, as I said, it's always 2020. It's always beautiful. It's always spring in the hindsight. But the real key is to understand the importance of all these experiences. As as Steve Jobs just mentioned, that the recording just mentioned. Sorry.
No, it was Steve. I brought him back.
Absolutely, we would all love to have him back, and he's immortal in a way. All these lessons that he has left for us, absolutely, he's definitely immortal at this point, and has always been. So yeah, great inspiration. So going back to my point, if you look at if you look at your life experiences, the mistakes that you have made, the failures that you have had, and you can I would say analyze them, or try to understand a trend, some sort of a lesson out of it, that what is it that you have been doing wrong, what is it that you have been repeating, what is it that you have been not correcting the course in other ideas. If you have failed more than once, or more than twice, more than 3 times, maybe even reflecting on all 3 of those failures and trying to understand that, okay, what were the 5 things that were common in these 3 failures? That would help you also understand that what are the things that you shouldn't do. Because it's also very easy that, yeah, I started business A, it failed. I should try business B. Yeah, I tried, it failed. I tried business C. I tried, it failed. Now, A, B, C, could be 3 different ideas, 3 different products, 3 different services, but have they been failing for the same reason, of you not being, I'm just going to put just pick a random thing, you not being a hard worker, or you not being, persistent with your product, you giving up too easily. What is it? Is is the problem you not filtering people you do business with correctly? Is the problem how you approach problem solving itself? So what are those key things that you keep making the same mistakes? If you are, then in that case, certainly you need to understand those trends. You need to understand those common behaviors and correct them in your business D, which you are about to begin. So the idea is, look at the dots that have been in your past, connect all the dots in the hindsight, and make sure that that is the kind of connection, that is the kind of understanding, that is the kind of learning that you apply to the the dots going forward.
So for somebody sitting out there at the moment, they're on a bus stop, or they're in a taxi, or they're just at their desk at work pretending they're working but actually listening to us. And if you're doing that, good on you, because that's what I used to do at work as well. What's the kind of thing that they should focus in on when they need to start a new project? Because you were saying perseverance and accepting challenges and all those kind of things. But at the very first step is just wanting something, isn't it? Or is there more to it? What talents did you have at the very beginning when you knew that you were going to make a success of it?
That's a question I really don't know the right answer for, because it's very different for everybody. When I was 14, I didn't know I wanted to be an entrepreneur. It was just a feeling. It was to be honest, it was desperation, that got me started, to be very frank. It was no need, it was no talent, it was no skills that we were talking about at that time. It was sheer desperation that, what, Mom and Dad have stopped the allowance. I need to make money to buy more books. That was just that pain that I really needed to solve. So perhaps you have a pain, and that pain could be different for everybody. So David has a different pain. Devesh has a different pain. So Shant has a different pain that he feels really passionate about. He's agonized with it, and he really needs to solve it. I don't know. It is you, who has to understand that pain that you're going through. In many cases, it may not be a pain that you're going through. It's something that you see that your employer is going through. A product that you can sell to your employer himself, or your colleague is going through, or your family member is going through. So it doesn't have to be a personal pain. It could be anyone's pain, but that is that is the starting point to identify that pain. But as the starter point you asked, I always say, the journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step, right? So the action really counts. So when you see that pain, what is your attitude towards it? Do you really think of solutions when you see problems, or you just ignore them? You know what? That's how it's always been. And that's the key differentiator between, I would say, employee and entrepreneur. So the typical employee just thinks from that, he has been trained, his mind has been trained to think in that way, because his boss always tells him, you know what, that's how it's always been done that way, right? That's how it's always been. That's how it's always been. So his mind is trained to think in that way. So when he looks at a problem, he's like, yeah, you know what, this is how we have been solving this, or this is how we have been going around this problem. Versus an entrepreneur thinks, you know what, there could be a better way. And that's the real key differentiator. So as I said, you have to start by thinking of the problem and the solution itself. And of course, as I said, you can't just be you know what, one day I want to be an entrepreneur. It's that aha moment. It's that identifying the pain and the solution together is what's going to get you started.
And also, you really, you don't need any more talents than being able to send an email, or do a spreadsheet, or a Word document. It really can start from the smallest little things, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, for me, for me, this starts with just buying a domain name, man.
And what was it?
And, to be frank, my first domain was breakingthe9to5jail.com. But even before that, for me, the action was as simple as, actually, I started a Facebook group called facebook.com/breakingthe9to5jail or whatever. And then I think they got rid of the group thing or whatever. And then we turned it into a page. Then we also had then once people started commenting there, I started what was called a Ning group, Ning Ning. And that used to be where you could build a group kind of a website for a monthly fee or whatever. We started that. So we didn't even commit to making a full website of of breaking the 9to5jail.com or whatever, until we really knew that what people wanted out of it, how people were interacting with us, from a brand perspective, from a personal perspective, and all of that. So the action, what got us started, was as simple as just creating a Facebook page.
Right.
That was it. And then we saw that people
This is
started
very
talking.
interesting. You create a Facebook page, but how do you get people to go to that? And I think that's the question that most of our listeners will be thinking. How do you suddenly manage to build a community? Because once you build the community, you've got momentum, haven't you? And then you can start selling products and you can build, whatever you want, but you need to have traffic. So how did you get them to come to this Facebook page that you set up, Escape 9 to 5?
So quite frankly, what happened, along the side of the Facebook page. So it was not just the Facebook page; it was also the Ning group, thing that we had created, and we grew fairly organically, So back then I was in New York, and when I would go to a networking meeting or whoever, whichever event, I would introduce my job as a 9 to 5 jail. So I'll tell them, hey, I'm in the 9 to 5 jail at AIG Insurance. I'm in the 9 to 5 jail at Lehman Brothers. I'm at the 9 to 5 jail at XYZ, right? So, people always found it amusing, and they always remembered me. So they always remembered me as the 9 to 5 jail guy, because, to remember my name, Divesh Dwivedi, was a bit difficult for them. But to remember me as the jail guy was a bit easier. So, you may look at, what's your hook? That would keep, you memorable, I would say, that would make it easy for people to remember you. That's one thing. And then the second is I started interviewing people who had successfully done this employee to entrepreneur transition. So I started talking to people just like we are talking right now. I would be on the other side. I would host this show called Breaking the 9 to 5 Jail. There are still some videos on YouTube. I've not done any recently, but in the beginning, that's what I started doing. So people who had done this, I started interviewing them, and now all of a sudden, instead of me only sending these these posts and articles and everything to my friends and family, I now had people who were interviewed, and because now they had a marketing collateral or press to show off, they started sending it to their family and friends, their colleagues, their network, and that's how it grew organically. So I'm sorry, I'm not a Facebook or a marketing expert who can tell you, no, you know what, here are the 5 things that I did to make it grow. Those were the organic ways how I grew the overall community.
No, I think that's the perfect answer, because that is leverage, and everyone can do leverage, can't they? Everyone can ask somebody for help and then hopefully build up a relationship, and that person will help them. That's the only way that I managed to get this show off the ground. When I first started doing it, although I knew other people were doing daily shows, I was thinking, how the hell do I get somebody to speak to me every single day? And I just couldn't get anyone. But then I got one person, and then I got 2, and then I got 3. And once I started actually interviewing them, and they didn't think that I was a complete muppet, hopefully they didn't think I was a complete muppet, then they're likely to refer me to other people. And that's exactly what you did. You allowed that leverage of their relationships to build the traffic that brings it back to you. It's incredibly powerful, isn't it?
Absolutely. And you also have to think of of it as a community, as not just people who are gonna eventually buy something from you, because that's just a byproduct of building a community. As long as you're passionate about the subject, you don't mind building the community and the tribe around it, but if you are just doing it for the sake of, can I quickly sell them an ebook? That's where it starts to go down. And, so interacting them at a human to human level definitely helps. So I would personally reply to each email. I would personally reply to each comment on the blog or each comment on the YouTube or whatever. And that's how I made sure that people connected with me, and not just, Breaking the 9 to 5 Jail is a book, let's buy a book. A book is talking to us. No, that was never the case.
You know, I had Sushant Mishra on episode 25, and he was the chap who introduced me to you. And, you know, hopefully, fingers crossed, at the end of it, you'll introduce me to other people. And soon you will have more than you can cope with. When you were building that community, the break from the 9 to 5, was there a point when you actually thought, oh my God, I think this is too big for me at the moment? Or was it something that was always, you know, comfortable to deal with whilst you were doing your corporate gig at the same time?
You know what? I would be lying if I say, like, you know, if it was too big or too small, just because I was having so much fun with it. I never felt that overwhelm of it being, like, you know, too big or too small. It was always fun. I, like, you know, after I quit my job actually, and I started my own firm, idea to inception, where I started helping aspiring and, like, you know, and first time and small business owner entrepreneurs. That's when I kind of slowed down a little, because again, like, you know, I now had so many things on my table, and that's where breaking the 9 to 5 jail kind of slowed down in terms of you know, interviewing more or whatnot. But at any point while I was actively running it, it never felt like, yeah, you know what, it's too big, I can't handle it. So yeah, for sure.
When you quit your job, your corporate gig, how scared were you?
Oh, I was scared. I was scared, but I knew that this is what needed to be done. Absolutely. Like, you know, there was no doubt in my head for, like, you know, for a single moment, even, like, you know, I was scared for sure, because something that I was doing just for fun now had to be done to earn a living. And it changes the ball game. It changes the overall game. Believe me, like, you know, it's a big change. So for sure, when you quit your job and you know, like, you know, you're making a good 6-figure salary at one of these Fortune 5 companies or bigger consulting firms, the next month you have to pay for your lifestyle, the kind of the house you're living in, the car that you're driving, like, you know, your medical, your this, your that, your family, and number of responsibilities that you have, for sure. So you know, now all of a sudden you have to make money out of what you were just doing for fun. You know, so that, as I said, that changes the ball game. So it definitely is scary. But if you do some, like, you know, some I would say forethought, analysis, like, you know, before you, like, you know, before you just jump into it, there is definitely ways how you can minimize that scareness, minimize that, like, you know, that overwhelm and whatnot. And that's what I actually help a lot of people with.
I think that's the thing that everyone needs help with, doesn't it? That leap of faith when you are earning a salary and you have become comfortable, and maybe you want more money than, you know, that you're earning presently. But when you do make that leap of faith, for so many people, it's a drop down. And it's a drop down. And do they, you know, cancel their gym memberships and their Netflix accounts and all those kind of things, or do they crack on twice as hard to keep it at that same level playing field that they're used to? And for a family, I found it, when I did that, I found it incredibly hard, because my family are used to a certain sort of lifestyle, and the fact that their dad was going off on a tangent and trying something new, I couldn't say to the kids, oh, you're not having this anymore now, kids, you're not having that, just because your dad's trying something different. So did you have a family that you needed to convince who was going to support you when you left, or were you a single man?
So I was single. So for me, I would say definitely one less thing to worry about was, of course, as you said, like, you know, the family approval, or, you know, the family obligations that you and many folks that, like, you know, that are in that situation have. However, again, like, you know, going back to my Indian family background, like, you know, if you quit your job just out of nowhere and, like, you know, and tell your parents that, you know what, I'm gonna start a business, like, you know, they look into you, like, look at you, like, you know, with the disgust, as if like you've gone crazy. They're like, oh, so this is 2000 all over again, man. Like, you know, you want to, like, you know, you have such a good job, you're getting paid, you have a beautiful house, you know, you should be actually thinking about getting married, settling down, like, you know, start saving towards your retirement, like, you know, having kids, all of these things, the important things in life. And now you are quitting after, like, you know, all that you have achieved so far, and now that you have a stable platform to, like, you know, sort of a launching pad to launch you in real life, right? So that was for sure. So I definitely had to And if family is a very important part of my life, absolutely. So I definitely had to please my mom and dad, to make them understand, no, this is time, I am an adult. I do understand. I did MBA. I worked for the corporations as you guys wanted. I understand what it takes, to be successful, but this is just not my destination, right? So that was definitely there, which I had to go through. So each one of us have a very different situation. In some cases, it's the family, as you mentioned. In some cases, it's your parents, as I mentioned. In some cases, it's a long-term ill, family member who you have obligation to give medical care to, and you have bills that you just cannot ignore. So for each one of us, it's very different, and that's where the real understanding of your situation, how you're going to leverage your situation and your resources to make the best of it while you are quitting and while you are making this transition, really comes into play.
And once you've done it, the message out to everyone is, it is scary. There's no getting away from it. I was scared. I was going to say something that I shouldn't then, but I was scared more than I've ever been scared before, quitting my job, because I was in a job that I'd been in for 10 years. There was kind of no chance of me losing it. I was just going through the motions. When I quit and I left, I started working twice as hard than I'd previously done. Then I realized that what I was working on wasn't fulfilling me, so I decided to do what I'm doing now, doing this show. Then I've had to work 3 times as hard as I was doing before. And for a long, long time, I wasn't bringing any money in at all from this venture in any shape or form. It was sucking me dry. But even now, when I look back on it, I still would have done the same thing, because I know now that my path is the right path. It's a unique path. And even if it wasn't, even if I was doing this and suddenly thought, hang on, I can't do this for the rest of my life, you can change direction. So if you are in a situation that you think, I really hate this, I hate the job, I hate the people, I hate whatever, don't worry about it. Just sort out your options and see what's out there, because you can always change direction once you're on a certain path. Do you agree with that, Devesh?
Yes, I agree. And one quick note I would add there is, I talk about this in my book as well. I always talk about it, to my clients as well. Just because you hate your job does not qualify you to be an entrepreneur. Because you could be hating your job for a number of reasons. Maybe you have an MBA, but you haven't found the right job in in business and management and, things that are strategy, things that you would like to do. You're still flipping burgers. Absolutely, you're going to hate that job. There's nothing wrong with that job. It's you who's not the right fit there. And same with the opposite. Maybe you are the guy who was always flipping burgers and absolutely loved that, making a good, burger, or or being a chef. But for some reason, you looked into the traditional career of of getting a grad school degree and and going to a corporate setting, and now you hate your job. So it could be a number of reasons that why you hate your job. So just because you hate your job does not mean you should quit and you should start a business. Essentially what it should be is, you should understand why you hate your job. What is it that you don't like? Could it be something else? Could it be another business? Could it be another role? Could it be another position? Could it be another company? So for example, in the 5 years that I worked in corporate settings after my MBA, I always thought maybe there was something wrong. Maybe there is some real good job that would fit me, my profile and whatnot. And my nature, to be very frank, not just my degree or my credentials. So I tried different jobs in IT, in business, in strategy, in finances, in not-for-profit. I thought maybe I first started with not-for-profit. You know what? Not challenging enough. Moved to banking. Yeah, you know what? After 6 months, not challenging enough. What not? So don't just think that because you hate your job, you should start a business. That's a very key learning you need to understand in this process.
No, I agree with that as well. And the other thing that I always say, that if you are in a job and you like, then well done to you. But don't just rest on it. try to do it to the best of your ability, because the more you put into it, the more you're going to take out of it, and you will be happy. I just wasn't happy. End of story. And I had to change path. Devesh wasn't happy. He had to change path. But if you've got a story out there and you're listening to us rant on, and you think, yes, I'm like that, I feel a bit like that, drop us a line on email at contactjoinupdots@gmail.com, and I will personally contact you. And if you feel brave enough, we'll get you on the show, and you can be our listener with a story similar to the two of us. What do you think about that, Devesh? Should I get more people on the show?
Absolutely. I guess it's as I always say, that you can be overeducated, you can be overworked, but you can never be over-inspired. And what really inspires me is the stories like this, where a listener, everyday guy like you and me, comes on the show, or talks to us over the blog, or writes a blog for us, or just comes on the show and talks just like we are, and tells us his or her story, that how they made it happen. Because it's very easy to read through the inspirational stories of Steve Jobs and Mark Zuckerberg, or and the likes, I would say, all the media darlings. But then people feel, you know what, maybe they are the chosen ones, they are the privileged ones, and I can't be the Mark Zuckerberg. But when you hear the everyday Joe, the David Rolfe and Divesh Dwivedi of the world, you realize, no, you know what, it's far more achievable than it looks like. I can be happy too while doing what I love, and making money that I need or deserve.
Yeah, absolutely. If I can do it, anyone can do it, really, because I'm not the most untechy person, but I'm the kind of most untechy person by design. I kind of do just enough to do what I need to do, and anything else I don't get involved in any shape or form. And if you go back to the sort of the Zuckerbergs and the Bransons and all those kind of things, yes, we see the highlights, because we only see them once they become famous, because they've succeeded. We haven't seen when they're laying on bedroom floors because they can't afford a bed themselves somewhere, and all the struggles, and when they can't afford to eat themselves. That would be a terrible thing to do, but they can't afford to eat for a couple of days. You don't see that, because that's not the juicy stuff. The juicy stuff is when they're suddenly making a squillion pound a second, and we all look up to them and go, they are the chosen ones. But for every one of you out there, potentially you can be a chosen one, but you're not going to be if you're just sitting there listening to this and not taking action.
Yeah, absolutely. Agree on that. And, as they say, every overnight success story has many years of work behind it, right? So once you become juicy, of course, people are going to listen to you and and be like, yeah, you know what, this is the chosen one. But you can become that by working many years, or months, or whatever it is that your case is. Everyone is different. Everyone has got different destination.
One of my favourite quotes of all time is by the American comedian Steve Martin, and I've mentioned it numerous times on this show because it's so simple. And he just says, become so good that people can't ignore you. That's brilliant, isn't it?
Absolutely, right on.
I wonder why the real simple ones are the best. And they're the most memorable, probably because they're simple. But they have that element of emotion, don't they? That when you hear that, become so good that people can't ignore you, you think to yourself, yes, if I practice and I have perseverance and I work harder than anybody else, something, hopefully, fingers crossed, yeah, you need a bit of luck, but you get more luck by actually putting yourself out there and trying these things, then ultimately something will happen, and normally it's a good thing. The things that have happened amazingly, the fact that I'm having a conversation with you and you're in Calgary, I'm just outside London, and until sort of about 3 months ago, it would never have happened. But now we're connecting, hopefully we're building a relationship, and that relationship can sort of branch off to anywhere. But you've got to have got out there and sent that email, opened that spreadsheet, turned that computer on, had a conversation, asked for help. I could go on and on and on. But you've got to do those, haven't you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Once again, I would repeat that whole thing that I said, that journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step. So it's about that action, as you said, starting your computer, opening that spreadsheet, it could be anything. And help comes from where you expect it the least from. So just like, go out and network, like, talk to anyone and everyone, tell them about your business when they ask what you do, or like, and soon you will also like, master your business pitch, right? Like while talking to these people, okay, so what do you do? And, you answer it, a million times, and then very soon you have perfected even your business pitch by doing so. So, as I say, just get out, get going, like, take the first step and then follow the natural path. Because the good thing about action is like, again, going back to, well, no, I didn't talk about it. So, how Newton, like, had this, the three formulas or three laws of motion. And one of them was that a body that's in inertia is not going to get out of inertia unless an outer force is applied on it. And the same, like, vice versa. A body in motion cannot be stopped, cannot be put into inertia unless an external force is put on it, right? So it's about that first action step. That's the outer force. That is your persistence or your motivation, or like, whatever you want to call it. Just put yourself in motion, and then it's very hard to stop you without another external force, which is not going to come in place. So unless you physically, like, think of or stop it for any reason, it's unstoppable. Once you take the first step, you understand the logical next step. You are like, okay, yeah, now I need to do this. Once you book a domain, okay, yeah, what, now let's think about getting the hosting or putting a new website together, maybe putting a WordPress, whatever. So the next logical step becomes clearer and clearer once you take the first and the second and the third step. So it's about taking that first step.
What's your next steps, Devesh?
My next steps. So absolutely, like, continue on my journey of like, of helping entrepreneurs, like, being more successful, starting more businesses, making money, doing what they love, what they're passionate about, and what their priorities are. We already touched upon the priorities, like, could be different for everybody. So my next step always is to help more and more entrepreneurs.
And how do you find those entrepreneurs? How do these people connect with you?
So, as I said, I follow a very natural and organic way of like, running my business. I don't go out there like, hard selling myself on any of like, any of the offerings that I have. My book is just out there on Amazon and things like that, like, so people find me that way. I definitely love the community building around it. So I go out, network a lot. I go to, one-on-one. Yes, there is a lot of social media and you can connect with a lot of people, but I still love the old school, going out there, shaking hands, exchanging business cards, asking people how, like, you can help them, asking people what they need help with. That's for sure, like, that's something I do. I speak a lot and, like, go out to a lot of events. I volunteer to a lot of business organizations here in Calgary that support entrepreneurs. So I just go out there and network with people. That's my way of doing business.
Well, let's bring the show to an end by sending you back in time, sir. And this is part of the show that we call the Sermon on the Mic. And this is when we send you back in time to have a one-on-one with your younger self. And if you did walk into a room and discovered your younger self sitting there, what age would you choose? Would it be the 5-year-old Devesh, or would it be the 20-year-old? And what kind of advice would you give them? So I'm going to play the music, and when it fades out, you're on the mic. This is the Sermon on the Mic. Ooh, with the best bit of the show, the Sermon on the Mic, the Sermon on the Mic.
Hi, 14-year-old Devesh. I would say you need to not worry about anything else, especially not the comic books that you're about to lose, but definitely make sure, like, you have a system to be successful, because a business without a system is not going to be successful. It's going to be at the best, like, a job you will buy for yourself. So just make sure that you have a system around your business. And hey, Devesh, at 20-year-old, I would say continue eating well and exercising, because you may have a 24-pack instead of 6-pack that you have right now when you are 30. So for sure, like, keep well, eat and exercise. That will be my two. And then for also the Devesh at 20-year-old, I would say avoid business with your friends. Be very careful in setting up expectations. If you're working with friends, you don't want to ruin a good relationship, friendship for anything. So make sure you keep the communication open and transparent, avoid polarizing at any cost, and appreciate and express that you do appreciate the help, and most importantly, try to manage and not boss around. And also partner with friends. Although contradicting to what I just said, avoid business with your friends. A friend in need is a friend indeed. This is very important. Friends who stood by you when you needed them are the ones who are going to make you realize how fortunate you are. So for sure, those are some of the lessons for my younger self.
And you didn't even go with, and keep away from the models.
For sure, yeah. So for the 20-year-old Devesh, yeah, you know what? Yeah, keep away from models too.
Even the attractive ones, Devesh.
David, I'm married now, man. So stop digging dirt on me, man.
I will do. I won't say any more. I won't say any more, Mrs. Devesh, unless you email me. Then I'll spill it all. Well, thank you so much for spending time with us today, joining up these dots, Devesh. It's been an absolute delight to have you on the show. Please come back again when you have more dots to join up, because I believe the only way to build our future is by connecting our pasts. Thank you so much.
Thank you, David. Thanks for having me on the show. I absolutely had a great fun of a time, and I appreciate you having me on your show.
David doesn't want you to become a faded version of the brilliant self you were once to become. So he's put together an amazing guide for you called the 8 Pieces of Advice that every successful entrepreneur practices, including the 2 that changed his life. Head over to joinupdots.com to download this amazing guide for free, and we'll see you tomorrow on Join Up Dots.